You know, that fear we all get about the future? It can feel super complicated. But what if I told you that a really simple story could explain exactly how it works? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into one that shows how our minds can build up all this anxiety. And maybe more importantly, how a tiny shift in how we look at things can change everything. So let me just ask you straight up. Are you afraid of the future? That kind of nervous, fluttery feeling about what's coming next is incredibly common. And we're going to explore it through the eyes of two kids, Gatu and Shinky, whose story is basically, well, it's our story.
So, our story kicks off with something really small, a moment you could almost miss. Gatu and Shinky are just walking home from school, totally happy, not a care in the world, and then they overhear something that plants this tiny little seed of worry.
They're grabbing a snack, and they tune into this conversation from some older college students. And these students are talking about a huge life change. Leaving the city, moving away from their parents, starting a whole new life. And right there, that's the moment it all begins. They hear one of the students say, "I'm feeling very nervous." And that's it. That's all it takes. That one little phrase, that raw emotion, it just latches on to Gatu and Shinky, and they immediately start thinking about their own futures. And that small worry? Oh, it doesn't stay small for long. It spirals. You know how our brains do that thing where they just leap to the absolute worst case scenario? That's what psychologists call catastrophizing. And it's exactly what happens to Gatu and Chinky as they get totally lost in their own heads.
And what's really interesting here is how their fears go in totally different directions. For Chinky, her anxiety is all about the emotional side of things, being lonely, missing her family. Gatu, on the other hand, his fear is all about the pressure, the stress of being a grown-up.
So, in Chinky's mind, she's picturing herself on this dark, lonely train platform. She's all by herself, about to get on a train to some new city, and she's just terrified. The real heart of her fear is being separated from everyone she loves. Her daydream gets so real, so vivid that she can actually feel the panic rising. And she's just thinking, no, 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 I won't go alone. Her imagination is running wild, and she's right at the peak of that fear.
Meanwhile, Gatu is stuck in his own personal nightmare. He's imagining being an adult, rushing out the door, missing his bus, and then showing up late to an office where this really scary, angry boss is just waiting for him. He sees his future as just this endless cycle of stress and getting in trouble. His anxiety hits its peak when he pictures himself buried under a mountain of work, being forced to stay late. And just like his sister, that overwhelming feeling makes him think, oh, no, no, no. It's this vision of a future that's all pressure and zero joy. Okay, so this is where things start to change. This is the turning point in the story. All that anxiety that's been bubbling up inside the kids all afternoon, well, it's about to come out. Right as their daydreams get to their scariest point, both Chinky and Gatu actually shout their panicked thoughts out loud. Their parents, who already noticed they were being kind of quiet, are totally startled. They know something is definitely up. So their parents step in, gently, and they ask a really simple, direct question. That question creates this safe space for the kids to finally talk about what they're so scared of. And that right there, sharing the fear, is the first step to making it go away. And this is where the magic happens. Once the fears are out in the open, their parents don't just brush them off. Nope, they offer them a new story. This is a perfect example of what's called cognitive reframing. Basically, you change the story you're telling yourself, and that changes how you feel. It's a game changer. So their dad jumps right in and tackles Gatu's fear head on. He explains that, hey, not all bosses are scary. His own boss is more like a friend. He describes his office as a fun place where people work together and help each other out. He paints a picture of a community, not a prison. And their mom does the exact same thing for Chinky. She takes that scary idea of being alone at college and reframes it as this amazing adventure. She talks about all the new friends she'll make, the fun things she'll get to do, like college festivals, and how she'll grow up to be this confident person who isn't afraid of anything. And it all comes down to this one simple idea. It's not so bad. It's the perfect antidote to that feeling of nervousness the kids overheard earlier. It's this dose of realism that completely dismantles the scary fantasy their minds had built up. The effect of this new perspective, it's like flipping a switch. With these new positive images replacing all the scary ones, the kids' entire outlook on the future just transforms. And just like that, the fear is gone.
Seriously, by replacing those scary, made-up scenarios with realistic, positive ones, their parents gave them a new, better story to tell themselves. And the anxiety, it just couldn't survive in that new headspace.
So the story wraps up with the kids doing a complete 180. They realize the future isn't this terrifying place they cooked up in their heads. Now that they can picture the friendships, the fun, and the adventure, they're actually excited for what's next.
Which, of course, brings us back to you. This story of Gattu and Chinky really shows us that our vision of the future is often just a story we tell ourselves. It's a story that can either control us or it's one we can choose to rewrite. So the question is, what story are you telling? Is your future a fear you have to manage, or is it an opportunity just waiting for you to embrace it?